Nicholas Axas. He's going to share with us a very personal story. And once you've heard it, you'll understand why Nick is so passionate about child and adolescent mental health. First, I'd like to share a few key points from his official bio. Nick received his Bachelor of Social Work and Masters of Social Work from the University of Denver. He has been working with children and their families for over 19 years. Nick joined the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Urgent Consult Clinic at Hotel Dieu Hospital in 2012 as a full-time social worker therapist and is the team leader for the clinic. Please join me in welcoming Nicholas Axas.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you to the Kingston Hospital Foundation and for Bill for putting this on. This is a great turnout for children's mental health, and especially for Clara when she gets here. She's quite the inspiration. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the work that we do at Hotel Dieu. So the Division of Child and Adolescent Mental Health provides comprehensive mental health services to children and adolescents below the age of 18 suffering from psychiatric disorders. And our multidisciplinary teams provide comprehensive outpatient services and include the following clinics. So there's our eating disorders clinic, family court clinic, mood and anxiety clinic, neurodevelopmental clinic, and the urgent consult clinic. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the clinic that I'm a part of. So the urgent consult clinic was created to reduce emergency room visits for children and adolescents with behavioral and emotional problems. So we have 6 spots every day that are available to youth, 3 of which come from local emergency rooms all the way from Brighton in the west to Prescott in the east, as far north as Norbrook and Charbet Lake. And we also have 3 spots that are available to our community partners. So whether that's Limestone District School Board, Pathways for Children and Youth, other children's mental health agencies or schools, so they can also refer children to our clinic. Following assessment at our clinic, these youth are either referred to a local community mental health agency or can have up to 4 follow-up sessions with us at the clinic, or in some cases, when their issues become severe or we're concerned about them, they could be admitted to the hospital in our inpatient psychiatric unit that's just for children and adolescents. And in our first year of operation, so that would be October 2012 to September 2013, we had over 514 children referred to our clinic, and out of those, we saw 401 kids last year for urgent mental health concerns. And our goal initially was to see 22 to 29 kids, and on average, we saw 34 kids a month in our first year, which is quite astounding for the Kingston area. So some of the research that we found about while we have our clinic open is that of those 401 completed assessments, 49% of youth told us they were bullied, either verbally, physically, or online. And of those 49%, a significant majority, 82%, told us that because of that bullying, they were actively considering suicide. And that's concerning, to think about our kids being bullied so badly that they feel as though they need to commit suicide or end their lives to relieve that pain. Luckily, with our clinic, there were no completed suicides amongst our assessed youth, and 14% of those youth did end up going to the emergency, through the emergency room up to the inpatient ward at KGH. And what's most alarming is cyberbullying is becoming alarmingly prevalent amongst children and adolescents with disastrous effects for our youth. So people might be wondering, why am I so passionate about this? Well, luckily I'm not wearing that outfit tonight. I still won't forgive my mother for the ruffles, but what I can tell you is this is me at 6. And when I was 6 years old, I realized that I was different than other people. I tend to get bullied at school because I had a strange, funny last name. My parents didn't speak English. I was a child of an immigrant. And I was just different. And as I grew up, I noticed that I didn't like sports that much. I tended to be more creative. And I knew that there was something that was a little bit different than everybody else. I didn't have the word for it, but as I grew up, I realized that I was gay. And by being gay, that set me apart from everybody else. And it made me feel alone and depressed and sad. And I would get isolated and picked on and bullied. And as I grew, still with the 80s hair and the 80s striped shirt, which I didn't wear tonight either, I realized that those pieces of me also started to affect me more personally. And by the age of 16, I was so depressed and so alone that I decided that I should commit suicide. So I tried to take 7 pills of Tylenol, which most people will tell you won't do anything that really mess up your liver quite a bit. But it was a suicidal gesture. I was looking for help, and I didn't know what to do. And sadly, after that, things went from better to worse, and told my parents, which didn't go out very well. They kicked me out of the house. I ended up living on the street for a few months, really slid into a really severe depression, and at the age of 19, again, thought about committing suicide. And it wasn't until I met a social worker named Jean, who connected me to services and got me some help, that I realized I didn't have to live that way. I didn't have to live a life full of depression and mental illness. And so going to therapy and doing my work, and then deciding to become a social worker myself, to be able to take the lessons that I learned and then pass them on to the youth that I work with. And so when I see these kids come into my clinic, whether they're gay or straight, whether they're suffering with anxiety or depression, whether they're coming in because they're being bullied or not bullied, I try and connect with my story with them so that they know that they're not alone and that they can get through this and it does get better. So some of the things I want to talk about a little bit are what the risk factors are for GLBT youth. Because there are higher rates of depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive and phobic disorders, suicidality, self-harm, substance use. And GLBT people are more than twice as likely to experience childhood maltreatment, to have interpersonal violence and personal loss. There are also 14 times more risk of committing suicide and substance abuse than their heterosexual peers. 77% of trans respondents in an Ontario survey recently considered suicide, and 45% have attempted suicide. And a National Institute of Health study in 2009 found that the odds are that GLBT youth, on average, are 190% higher risk for using substance abuse, and for bisexual youth, that's 340% higher, and for females, 400% higher. So one of the things that we did in our clinic was we looked at bullying, and we wanted to see how is bullying affecting kids. And what we know is that 1 in 3 adolescents in Canada tell us that they've been bullied. That's the 9th highest rate in the developed world. 47% of Canadian parents reported that their child is experiencing bullying. But many of those parents, especially the ones that come into our clinic and talk to me, don't know how to deal with it, don't know how to address it, don't know how to be able to help their child. An Ontario study reported that 30.9% of grade 9 to 12 students were bullied at school. Again, non-heterosexual students have a 3 times higher bullying rate. Girls are more likely to be bullied on the internet than boys. And astoundingly, cyberbullying, threatening or aggressive emails or instant messages or text messages, is 73% of the total of bullying. That's the most commonest form out there. So suicide, how common is suicide? Suicide is the second leading cause of death after motor vehicle collisions in Canada for adolescents. Suicide rate is 11.9 out of 100,000 suicide for 15 to 19-year-olds, and the suicide below the age of 14 is pretty rare. Males are at 9.6, females at 2.3 out of 100,000 kids who commit suicide. First Nation youth in Canada have a 5 to 6 times higher rate of suicide than their non-native peers. And 90% have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder, a mood disorder, substance use disorder. And as far as risk factors, having a psychiatric disorder, loss of face or humiliation, family history, breakups, and substance abuse can be causes. For me, having that lost connection with my parents, not having the support of family, and as I got older into my early 20s, I probably did some stuff that probably wasn't the smartest idea, but again, it was trying to cope with what that loss was, what the bullying was, what the depression was that I was going through. So some of the research that we've completed at our clinic shows that there's a significant association between being bullied and suicidal ideation. And that females are bullied 1.8 times more than males. Suicidal ideation is 2 times more common in victims of bullying. And a study shows that bullying is one of the variables associated with suicidality in adolescents and children presented in emergency rooms for psychiatric consultation. And public and professional education is what's going to help to cure this issue, to really pay attention to it and address it, to make sure that our kids don't have to go through the same type of thing that I went through. So let's talk. Let's make sure we have that conversation. Let's make sure that we're talking with our kids, we're talking with our schools, our hospitals, our mental health professionals, our neighbors, Make sure that that conversation isn't something that's hidden away or made to look bad. I had a young man today who came into my clinic that I saw who was struggling with suicide. And one of the things I always try to explain to kids is that as a society, we're always so pro-health and preventative health care. And I say, why do we always go in every year for a physical, right? Make sure everything's okay, make sure we can be preventative, but why do we only focus on the body? We have cardiologists for the heart, nephrologists for the kidneys, neurologists for your brain, but no one ever talks about the mind, which is just as an important organ as any other part of your body. So if we're paying that much attention to our bodies, we also need to pay it to our minds. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming and attending tonight's event. It's so, I'm so happy to see so many people here, and especially so many young people. This is absolutely amazing. Denise said a story which I usually ask people to raise their hands if they have something, and then if they have depression. I'm not going to do it here tonight, but just imagine if these 1 in 5 or 1 in 4, I would say, people suddenly came and disclosed, we have mental illness. What would happen? Just think about it. So, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our project. Our project is conducted at Providence Care, and I would give you the contact information a little bit later, but it's really a collaborative project led by Dr. Sid Kennedy from University of Toronto. We have about 9 universities, we have 5 clinical sites, and we're very happy to be one of them. We are raising money for our local site here at Providence Care, and we'll be doing a very exciting project. So let me tell you, our project is trying to establish biomarkers. Biomarkers, it's a funny name, but actually biomarker is a biological sign or mark which can allow us to predict something. To predict a normal versus abnormal process, to predict subtype in the disorder, to predict response to treatment, and this is where we are focusing our attention with this particular project, and also to inform us about the prognosis. Now, the vision of CanBind, and CanBind is Canadian Biomarker Integration Network in Depression, is really to integrate clinical imaging and molecular markers in order to identify key signatures of treatment response across a broad range of depressive disorders. So what we are trying to do here is to cast a large fishing net. We're going on a fishing expedition here. We would like to study a person who has depression from every possible angle we know, and this is from clinical point of view, with a very careful clinical characterization, including bullying, including childhood development, including the current status and the history. We would like to study them through imaging. We will be doing MRIs, we will be doing electroencephalograms, we'll be doing different types of imaging, and we'll do a full set of molecular studying, including genetics or genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, you name it, everything. Everything we know currently we are going to study for each and every participant. And with the help of a super computer technology, we're hoping that we'll be able to identify a few markers which will allow a physician or a clinician or a therapist, when it's sitting with a person with depression, to be able to predict which treatment would work best for that one person. And if we are able to do that, that would be a major breakthrough. So this is why we are so excited. I forgot I have a few more other slides. This is, I already mentioned this. So this is the website you can go on, It's a canbind.ca, and you can find some information locally here at Providence Care. We have Kathleen Walker, and she can be contacted on the extension 6123. We're looking for people who have depression, who will undergo treatment and a lot of investigations. We're also looking for healthy volunteers, so don't hesitate. If you have a day to spare, come. You will be thoroughly tested, and you will be used as a control. So with that, I'll stop here, and I'm again very happy to see you. I'll be happy to answer any additional questions later on. I'll be around, so stop by, say hello. Thank you.